Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how I made my Rikku costume from Final Fantasy X. Let's get started. First I'm going to start with a shirt and shorts that I found at the thrift store for only $4 each. They're not at all the right shape, length, or color, but I'll show you how I fix that all in this video. First I start by tracing the areas with chalk that I need to alter, like cutting off the sleeves and making this into a tank top. I also trace on the shorts to make them shorter. Then I cut everything off. Now I have a good base for the tank top and shorts. I just have to fix the structure of them and finish the edges. I put the tank top on inside out and pin down the side so it fits my waist better. I don't make it too tight because I'm going to need to fold down the seams under my bust. Then I sew over the sides and turn it right side in and put it back on. I pinch little sections from under my bust down to my hips and pin them in place to create seams down the front. Then I sew them down. Next I use the sleeve I cut off to make a collar. I sew a straight line from the edge of the sleeve about an inch or two wide. Then I pull one of the strings from the stitch to ruffle the fabric. Then I pinch little vertical lines throughout the collar and space them evenly apart and sew them in place. You can see the result here. Then I cut off excess fabric and sew it onto the collar of the shirt. I also finished the ends of the shorts by folding the edge under and running a stitch through it. Now it's time to fix the color of the shirt. It's currently too bold and red for me, so I'm going to tone it down a bit and make it a little more orange and beige by mixing cheap acrylic craft paint in the desired color. I also mix in some water to water it down. Make sure you use a scrap piece of fabric first to test how the paint will look after you mix it. Then let the test fabric dry, and if it turns out okay, then you can paint your costume. If not, keep adjusting it until you're happy. I brush the paint on evenly and make sure to work it into the fabric. I apply it all over the entire shirt and let it dry. You can see the color is already so much better, but I'm going to make some other adjustments to make it look even more detailed. I mix some more yellowish paint and water it down and paint it carefully onto the shirt and add shading. After I'm happy with the color and where I apply it, I add a little bit more highlights to areas like the chest. I also go in with a darker brown color to add shadows and also to define the edges and seams. It's basically like painting a detailed picture. Instead of just one solid color on the shirt, you're adding a bunch of different tones which will really add to the overall effect and make it look like you're from a video game. After I'm happy with the shirt, I also adjust the color of the shorts and make them slightly lighter green color. I also carefully paint on dark lines evenly spaced apart. And I add some even lighter green faded edges to the bottoms of the shorts. Then I pin and sew on some white ruffles to the bottoms of the shorts. Once the ruffles are sewn on, I water down some light green paint and paint the ruffles to blend them in with the pants better. Here you can see all the changes that were made to this $8 thrift store outfit. It doesn't even look like the same outfit at all. I took some little strips of vinyl and sewed them down to the edges to make straps for the sides of the shirt. I sew 6 of them, 3 for each side of the shirt. I carefully pin them in place and make sure that both sides line up properly. Once they're all pinned down, I sew them to the shirt. Next, I cut little pieces of popsicle sticks slightly longer than the ends of the straps, and I paint them with a solid black acrylic craft paint. Then I paint them silver. Next, I glue them to the sides of the straps with super glue. This is to replicate the metal pieces she has on the sides of her straps. Next, I'll show you how to make the goggles. I start with some basic swimming pool goggles. Then I rip off all the straps and cut off the edges and pull off the rubber parts around the eye. I take some poster board and glue it to the inside of each lens to make a bridge between them to hold them together. Then I trace out the lenses onto some foam and cut them out so they can fit inside of it. And I glue the foam around the lens. Then I cut around them in the shape I want. I cut little strips of foam and wrap them around the lenses and hot glue them in place. Then I cut these little weird shapes out of foam and carefully flip and glue down the edges of the curved part. After it's folded down, I glue it to the goggles. I cut off any excess foam. And this is what I'm left with after gluing it all together. I also glue on some elastic bands so I can wear it around my neck or eyes if I want to. Then I coat all the foam in a few layers of Mod Podge to make them smooth and to seal it. Then I paint it with a base coat of black acrylic craft paint. After I paint it black, I go over some areas with a gunmetal silvery color. After I'm done painting the goggles the desired color, I paint the white strap red with some slightly watered down acrylic craft paint. And that's pretty much it for the goggles. Next, I'm going to show you how I made this belt. First, I cut some craft foam in the desired shape and length of the belt, and then I sewed some vinyl over it. I also cut a shorter strip for the yellow part out of fabric and pinned it in place. Then I painted the entire belt with acrylic craft paint to make it the right color. Then I used a hole puncher to punch some holes into the belt, and I used the tip of my scissors to cut out all the holes that were punched through since the hole puncher alone wasn't strong enough to go through vinyl. And here's my sweet baby pug wanting to get attention. I also painted some googly eyes silver and glued them to the belt for extra details. The buckle was just made out of little pieces of popsicle sticks that I glued together and painted silver. And here you can see all the little details I added to the belt. Now let's move on to the straps around her leg. First, I took some black vinyl and cut and sewed a bunch of straps for the leg. Then I pinned all the straps together and sewed them down. Make sure when you're pinning it, you put it on your leg to check and see if it fits. After I sewed it, I glued popsicle sticks to the inside of each strap to make sure they didn't ruffle or bend or move. Then I grabbed a bunch of little googly eyes that I painted silver and started supergluing them to the straps for extra details. This is such a cheap and easy way to add studs to an outfit, but you can also use real studs if you want. I just made the pouch by sewing some rectangles together and adding a flap over that, then using popsicle stick and googly eyes for the details, and then I sewed that onto the straps. Now for the boots. I found these cheap black boots at the thrift store for $7. I sewed some strips of vinyl around the top of the boot and a cross shape down the front of the boot. Since it's not at all the right color, I fixed that just like I fix everything else, which is with paint. I start with a light color to cover up all the black areas. Make sure if you're painting over a zipper you do it very lightly because you don't want any clumpy paint to dry between the zipper. After I'm done painting it all the lighter coat, I add a second coat of a darker cream color. Then I paint the bottom and tops of the boots brown. And I paint green over the cross shape. I also paint the sole of the shoe a lighter taupe color. And I let the paint dry. While I'm waiting for the boots to dry, I sculpted buckles out of clay and then I made resin molds of them. I have a full video on how to work with resin here. First, I evenly mix part A and part B of the resin and then I pour them into my molds. I also make some little molds out of screws. For these little black shapes, I just cut them out of craft foam and glued them to the boots. Then I started gluing down all the buckles and other details. Here are the boots after completely altering them. For the other buckles I made out of resin, I needed them for the shirt. So I take my super glue and glue the pieces down to the straps on the side of the shirt. And here's what it looks like when it's all finished. I also made her bulky glove by sewing a padded tube for my arm and a little glove for my hand. And I painted them to make them look more weathered and the right color. I know you're probably wondering by now, why don't I just buy fabric in the right color? And that's usually because either this is already scrap fabric I have lying around so I just put it to use, or I buy my fabrics on sale and they don't always have the right colors I need. Not to mention, I really love the effect and texture that paint gives a costume. Plus, it's an amazing way to save money and get a great result. I also added some brown vinyl straps to the gloves. And here it is all finished. Next, I make her arm weapon thingy. First, I cut the shape out of foam, and I sew fabric over it, and I sew lines down the fabric. Then I sew strips of elastic to connect the sides together so I can slide it on and off my arm. I used some scrap fabric, which I already had that was yellow, but it's not the right color, so I just paint it orange. I also go over the seams with some brown paint to make them more defined. Then I paint all the elastic straps brown. I have a pattern for this little weapon piece for her hand on my website that you can download and print. I trace it onto poster board and cut it out. Then I glue the poster board to the craft foam and cut that out as well. I bend the square piece to curve it, and then I cut strips of craft foam and glue them down around the edges. Here are all the pieces all cut out and ready to glue together. I glue the little blades to the sides of the square piece. I coat it in some Mod Podge, then I paint it with a black base coat. Then I paint the little blade part silver. On the orange part, I glued on some googly eyes that are painted silver for extra detailing. And here you can see the handpiece all painted. I also glued an elastic strap underneath the handpiece so it would move with my hand. She has these big blue wing-looking things hanging from her back. So to make those, I just cut the shape I need out of craft foam and cover it in blue fabric. I folded the fabric over the piece and felt it with my fingers and pinned it around the edges. Make sure you don't pin down the foam accidentally because you're going to want to be able to slide it out. After I'm done pinning it, I take out the foam, sew over the pinned areas, cut off the excess fabric, and fold the piece right side in. Then I slide the foam back into the fabric. It should fit snugly in the fabric like a pillowcase. I repeat this process twice, and when I'm done, I paint them yet again to get the right color. I also paint detailing around the edges and little flower symbols at the bottom, and I do it on both sides. Above the wings where it's attached to the shirt, there are little metal pieces. To make these, I cut some shapes out of craft foam. After I'm done cutting out the base shape twice, I then use the same pattern and cut out the edges and the circle in the middle. Then I trace those pieces onto craft foam as well as cut them out. Then I glue those pieces over the base shape that I cut first. Then I glue both of those onto poster board to cover the holes, and then I coat it in Mod Podge and give it a black base coat of craft paint. Then I paint it silver. After I'm done painting the wings and they dry, I sew them onto my shirt and glue the metal pieces over it to cover the seam. And that's it for the costume! I hope you guys found this tutorial helpful. Even if you're not making a Rikku costume, maybe this taught you how to repurpose cheap thrifted items even if they don't look much like what you need. I also hope this maybe helped you learn something about how much painting can help you use fabrics and materials you might not have thought you could use before. Not only can that help save you money, but it can also help make finding materials more accessible. I also have a makeup tutorial and wig tutorial for this costume on my channel. There will also be a bunch of helpful links in the description below, so check them out. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Bye!